All right, hello again, everybody. Hi. So, question for the audience. Who here has used Kafka before? Production, otherwise? Okay, wow. A lot of Kafka people. What about RabbitMQ? Okay, kind of the same people. All right, and when you're writing to Kafka, RabbitMQ, we're using JSON? No? Protobuf? Thrift? Avro? Okay, we got some Avro. So at SimpleBet, we started, we had a need to start to produce data to our data lake. We wanted to record certain information, and we wanted to be able to aggregate that information in real time for analytics purposes, for machine learning purposes, et cetera. And we started a data pipeline where we wanted to interact with RabbitMQ because we didn't want to have to deal with all of the Kafka nonsense in all of our Elixir applications. RabbitMQ is just really easy to work with AMQP. And we really wanted like an easy drop-in library where you could define a little schema in Avro, and with one line, you could publish the data, encode it in that Avro format, and it would show up in the data lake, and you'd be able to query it, and it was all structured and all that fun stuff. So I've had a storied journey with Avro, and I started writing about it in this blog post. About 3 years ago, when I first started at SimpleBet, we were trying to find a way to send data to our customers in a way that was really flexible. And for whatever reason, we kind of started off with Kafka as like the solution that we would send data to our customers. And we found out, kick the water. We found out that with Kafka, it's very hard to give the right inversion of control to our customers on the other side who maybe want to only subscribe to certain information, or if there's a topic, maybe all the data points are not particularly relevant. And what we found with Kafka is that we really had to decide that for our customers, which made it a bit difficult in publishing. And we found ultimately that AMQP and RabbitMQ is much more flexible with headers exchange and topics exchange and kind of all the other things that you get with AMQP. We could allow our customers to depend on certain topic bindings, queue bindings and what have you in order to just get the data they needed. So during that time when we were still in Kafka, I started messing around with Avro libraries and became very upset with the quality of error messages you would get when you would send, maybe you'd send an integer, but it was accidentally nil, and you just get like some explosion of tuples from the underlying Erlang library and didn't really tell you anything valuable. Also, if you had like an atom key and passed it, it would blow up. And I was like, why can't it just cast it to a string for you like every other like JSON library does that? So about 2 years ago, I started messing around with Erl Avro and contributing to that. And then we moved to AMQP and RabbitMQ, and I was happily forgot about Avro and all these other things for a very long time. And then our data team's like, hey, we need to produce information onto our data lake. So I'm like, oh, here we go again. So I originally didn't work on this project, and I don't do a ton of coding anymore at all. But one of our engineers had picked a newer library that's part of the Beam community family of libraries called Avro X, and it's written in pure Elixir. And I was like, okay, this is like a library written in pure Elixir. Maybe they focus more on developer experience and great error messages. And so I play around with it, and I'm like, oh, man, it's still not good. So for whatever reason, I felt very motivated. And let me refresh here, because the syntax highlighting is not working. I decided to rewrite the schema parser for this Avro library and focus on developer experience and get like really high quality error messages when you either define a schema that's incorrect or if you try and encode or decode data with the schema. And I wanted to be able to know exactly what went wrong. So now with Avro X 2.0, I've taken this existing library, and the current maintainers, Sean and CJ, were very kind to kind of just let me have access and start committing to main and really going for it. And so over like maybe a few week period, I took the schema parser that was written primarily using Ecto and just wrote a hand-rolled schema parser. So now if you try and decode a schema, an Avro schema that's typically written in JSON, if you forget to have a key, it will tell you, okay, there's a schema, it's missing a required key. Records have to have names. If you have a union, which should have all distinct types, and you have a duplicate, it's going to tell you that the union contains a duplicated int, nested unions, invalid names, yada, yada. Now, Avro schemas can be written in many languages. If you're in a polyglot environment, maybe you're writing and publishing data from a Java application or a Go application, and you're decoding it elsewhere. And so because of that, you have to make sure that if you write an invalid schema that's accepted in another language, you could still decode it in your language. So you don't want to be too strict. But if you're the one who owns the schema and you're putting kind of like just random keys into the schema, you want to be able to get feedback that you're doing something a little bit wrong. So skipping ahead to somewhere here. I don't know, somewhere in this blog post it says that if you add the strict mode, it will explode if you add a metadata key that's not supposed to be there. So if Avro is interesting to you or you use it at work, check out AvroEx 2.0. I think it doesn't have a ton of usage, but I really put a lot of time into it. I'd love to get more contributors or get more use cases. Or maybe just get someone interested in developer experience and being able to improve error messages in libraries, because I think that's something that really adds to the day-to-day experience of working with tech. So with that, thank you.